Hi BookTube, Lynette here, and today's video I'm going to talk about all the books that I finished in the month of January. January started out really well for me. It tapered off towards the end of the month. I had a little bit of a mini slump, but it wasn't a proper slump. It was just more that I was unsure of where my mood was in terms of reading. I knew what I wanted to kind of like, where I wanted to go with my reading, but I couldn't actually pinpoint the books that I wanted to read. So it did slow down towards the end of the month, but I did still have a very good month. So let's go through some of the stats. I finished a total of 9 books in the month, and across those 9 books I gave them an average of 3.97 in ratings. I managed to read 2,167 pages, either digitally or physically, and I listened to just over 9 hours of audio. The breakdown, I read 1 print book, I read 7 ebooks, and I listened to 1 audiobook. And the genres that they covered were historical, romance, and mystery. As far as my reading challenge goes, 4 of the 9 books I read were books that were on my shelf at the start of January. So that's another 4 books knocked off of my TBR. The other 4 books were either for book club reads, or they were new releases in the month of January that I immediately read as soon as I had them. For my series tracking, and I promise there is a video coming about series in progress, I promise, just updating you where I was on the 1st of January. I do have it prepared, I do have it done, I just need to edit it and upload it. But 7 of the books that I read were from a series. 3 of them were series starters. One of those series starters was a reread though, and I hadn't actually read the rest of the series because when I originally read it, it was a standalone, and it's become a series since, and I hadn't really taken any notice of it. So what I have done is I have added it to my series in progress list because I do want to read the rest of the books. I am interested after rereading the first one. The other 4 books that I read, 3 of them were series continuation, and 1 of them was a finish up to date. One of the series continuations though also brings another series up to date, but I know there are more releases coming later this year for that book, so for that series. So I've only classed it as a continuation for now. So now we've talked about the stats, let's talk about the books that I actually finished. So the first book was a carryover from December, and this was the December book club pick for Cozy Book Club. We decide, because obviously we normally have our meeting on the last Sunday of the month, and with the last Sunday of the month being around Christmas, that didn't actually fit. So we moved it to the first week in January, and it gave us all a few extra days to read it. The book we read is Once Upon a Wardrobe by Patti Callahan. I actually did really enjoy this book. I gave this book 4 stars in the end. It's historical fiction, but it's set in the 1950s, and it's about a young woman, Meg, who is studying in at college, and she is studying where C.S. Lewis is actually a lecturer at the time. Her younger brother is seriously ill, he is terminally ill, and he has read the first of the Narnia books that was released in 1950, and he's fallen in love with the world. He's aware that C.S. Lewis is a lecturer at the same university that Meg is attending, and he has asked Meg to try and meet C.S. Lewis and find out where the story of Narnia came from. And that's where the book takes us. This was a book about stories. It was a book about stories, and it was a book about life stories. And I went into this with high hopes. It was a potential 5-star for me. Narnia is a world that I discovered at the same age as Meg's little brother is in this book, and it's one of the very, very first fantasy worlds that I ever entered into is the Land of Narnia. And so this was a bit of nostalgia for me as well, and I was thoroughly swept away with the whole thing. Now, we don't get a lot of interaction with C.S. Lewis. We get some interaction with him, we get some of his storytelling, but then the rest of the story is told through Meg's own words, and she's learning to tell stories herself. Take a shot every time I say the word story. I don't take a shot every time I say the word story. I absolutely fell in love with it through this, and I definitely want to go back and read Patti Callahan's other work that she's done. She has done another book around C.S. Lewis, and it's around his wife, and she has a fair amount of knowledge on the subject because she's looked into it, and she has connections within the family, and that came across to me that she knew what she was talking about, that obviously there was some speculation in there, but she knew the stories, she knew some of these stories, and I fell in love with it. There were maybe one or two things that jarred with me a little bit that kept it from being the 5-star. Just maybe the odd thing that happened in the story that to me, even for the time that it's set in, it didn't ring true. It wouldn't be something that I would have dealt with as well as it was dealt with in the book. But I absolutely loved it, and I do recommend it, and it was a great first finish for the year. The next book that I finished is Priest by Sierra Simone. This is book 1 in her series that is now titled Priest. This is the book that I have added the series to my series in progress because having reread it, I want to read the rest of the books that she's written because it's based around a family group. It's about Tyler, who is a priest, and he's a Catholic priest in small town America. And one day a young woman, Poppy, walks into his church, and the attraction between them is immediate. I gave this book 5 stars. This was our Clipterature book club pick, and I have to say I have given this book 5 stars. However, this book is not without its faults. It does have flaws, it does have gaps in the storytelling, it does have moments where you're like, why? But for me, this was just the whole thing for me just fell together and just left me with a big grin on my face, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, there were parts of it that were not that believable, especially some of the dirtier scenes. And also, you know, there were elements of it like, how were they never caught? Because this is very much a relationship that's happening in secret because Catholic priests are not allowed to enter into relationships. But yeah, it was a great ride, and it's the only book of Sierra Simone's I've ever read. So I do want to read the rest of the series because certainly 2 of the books follow Tyler's brothers. And I'd like to know if they are just as good, just as racy, just as steamy, and I'm definitely going to be picking those up at some point, probably at some point this year. The third book that I finished was a new release that came out in January. It was one that I had on pre-order, so it doesn't count as a new release for this year that I've purchased towards the book buying, but yes, the book is Fury of Frustration by Corinne Callahan. This is the most recent book in her Highland Dragons, Dragon Fury series, Scotland series. I can't remember the actual series title. It follows Kruger and Ferguson. Ferguson, she has inherited a mansion in Scotland near Aberdeen, I think, which is a hotel. And Kruger is one of the dragon warriors that is part of the pack based nearby, only he has a bit more to him than than initially meets the eye, than maybe his packmates know, and Ferguson taking over the hotel is a danger to his secrets coming out. However, they are fated mates, and as always with Corinne's books, her dragon men are not able to resist their fated mates, and Ferguson likewise is unable to resist Kruger. This was a quick read. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy all of Corinne's books so far. Not a single one has left me feeling disappointed or out of sorts. This one went fairly quickly. The only reason I didn't quite give this one the 4 stars, it's more of a 3.5, 3.25, 3.5, is because of, it was just so, there was a lot there in a very short book, and I could have done with a few more things being a little more fleshed out. So there was very much, I mean, Fated Mates is always insta-love anyway. But this one was just a bit too intense. There wasn't enough show and a bit too much tell. But again, thoroughly enjoyed it. This brings the series up to date, like I said, but there is more to come later in the year from the series. So it's not a series ending that I've counted for now. I've counted it as a continuation. The 4th book that I finished is my only series finish that I had in the month, and that is A Wild Ride by Vivian Arend. This is the 5th and final book in her Thompson & Son series. This is a series that's been long overdue, which over the course of last year and now in January this year, I've managed to catch up and complete. This is about Troy, who is the youngest of the Thompson brothers, and it's about how he has to convince his best friend Nicole that they are supposed to be together. Now, Troy and Nicole have had a bit of an off and on relationship over the years that we've been following the older brothers, and Nicole has decided that she needs to be a bit more serious than maybe she and Troy have been. Only Troy knows at this point that she's the one for him, and he's the one that can be serious for her, and he has to convince her. And that's what this whole book is just Troy being there, being steady, being reliable, being someone that, yes, brings fun and joy and laughter to Nicole's life, but is also proves that he is solid, reliable, dependable, and can be there through the bad as well as the good. And he's just such, I think actually, out of all the brothers, I think he is my favourite. Purely because he shows how much of a grown-up he really is. Whereas everybody else thinks, oh, he's still baby Troy, he's still the kidder, because he does play pranks on everybody. But they haven't quite realised just how grown-up he is. Again, it's a little bit of a steamy book, and as always, I enjoyed that. It was a 4-star read for me. It was a really lovely finish to the series, and yeah, definitely going to miss Vivian Arend's writing, because I think I am pretty much up to date with everything that she's released now, and I'm not actually sure if she's still writing, to be honest. I'm going to have to look into that, because I do enjoy her books. She's one of the earliest romance readers I discovered when I started reading on Kindle. The 5th book that I finished this month was another series bring up to date continuation, but I've counted it as a continuation, and that is volume 4 of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. So book 5 is supposedly due out in February this year, but nowhere seems to have it available for pre-order yet. But I read volume 4 in January. I really had to get the slightly bad taste of volume 3 out of my mouth. I had to get on and read this one before I left it too long. This is about Nick and Charlie. They are 2 boys aged 16 and 17 who Charlie already knew that he was gay at the beginning of the series, and Nick is discovering his sexuality. Only along the way we then discuss mental health, and there's eating disorders, and volume 3 kind of, for me, it touched on issues and then didn't really follow through with them. It follows through more with this book. It still doesn't really talk about them in a way that I felt satisfied with. But there is information there, and it does show the importance of, if you are suffering in any way, shape or form, that you need to reach out and tell the people who love you, because they will help you. And that's a little bit hard for me to say. But yes, that is the whole premise as we're going through Heartstopper. And volume 4 is characters getting the help and support that they need to get them through the tough times. And I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely looking forward to the 5th and final volume coming out. I am keeping an eye out for pre-orders opening because I want to pick it up and I want to finish Nick and Charlie's story. I want to know where they go from the end of this one. The 6th book that I finished this month was The Dragon Collective by Jessie Donovan. This is book 8 in her Lockguard Highland Dragon series, set in Scotland. Scottish dragons this month were a theme, apparently. Yes, this is book 8 in the series. It's a series continuation. There are a couple of books at the moment after this, and I know there are more planned for this series. But this book is about Lachlan and Kat. Lachlan is an artist who is also a recovering alcoholic. Kat is a dragon woman who is also very keen on art, but she also has an interest in improving dragon-human relations. So between the two of them, they have been arranging an art exhibition on Lockguard's site. And yes, both of them are a bit of a temptation to the other. Kat quickly realises that Lachlan is her true mate, and Lachlan finds that Kat is a test to his resilience, and he is concerned that she will have a negative impact on his sobriety. However, things snowball as they do in Jessie Donovan's world, and the two of them have to face what they mean to each other, while also facing danger from outside forces, as always. Again, thoroughly enjoyed these. There's not a lot more, you know, these books now are pretty formulaic. I devoured them when I first discovered Jessie 7 or 8 years ago now. But these books have become a bit formulaic now, so I can't really read more than one at a time, because it is pretty much dragon meets human, human is dragon's true mate. There's some danger that puts one of them in danger, the other one has to cope with it. And I sound like I'm being really scathing of it, but it's not. They're really enjoyable. I don't feel like I'm reading a story over and over again, because there are different personalities. They have different interests. There is the whole backstory going on with the people who are against dragons, and that is constantly evolving. There are other things happening. She's widened up the dragon universe now. We are not just restricted to Scotland and to the north of England. There is a clan in the south of England. She is talking about dragon clans in Australia. There are books from dragon clans in America, and talking about South American dragon clans in that. So there is this whole wider world that is opening up now with these books, so that it's starting to be more that you have to read the books more in publication order than you do in actual series order. You still have to read them in series order, but you have to skip between the series if you want to get the full impact, because some of the stories cross over with each other and you meet characters. You can read the series as series, but it's richer if you read them crossed over each other. Again, will continue to read. There are currently 2 more books released in this series. I'm working my way towards getting to those, but I have to skip over to a couple of the other series that is intertwined with it first. So yes, we'll be reading more of these later on this year. The next book, as I said, is an interconnecting story. So the next book that I finished was The Dragon's Choice by Jessie Donovan, and this is book 1 of the Tahoe Mates series. This is set around Lake Tahoe in North America. So we, like I say, she's ventured out into other worlds, and I'm really enjoying this. I have completely forgotten the name of the couple in this book, but it's in America. What actually happens is you can sign up to have some time with a dragon. The dragons have a lottery, so people are pulled from the lottery and dragons are put forward, but dragons can only be put forward if siblings go forward. And in this we have one of the siblings who walks into a room completely drawn to a female that has been drawn for the lottery and chooses her. All the women that are in the room know what they're signing up for. They know that they are signing up for either a few days of fun with a dragon, or they could end up being the dragon's true mate and they end up having to move to the dragon lands. And this is one of those stories. They are true mates, and again there is danger from outside forces who aren't happy that a human is living in the dragon amongst the dragons, and that's from within the dragon this time. So yes, again it was another great, it's a series starter. I know I'm not supposed to be starting new series, but like I say, these books are interconnected with the Stonefire dragons and with the Lockguard dragons, and I have to read the 3rd book in this series before I can go back to the UK dragon stories. So I'm just trying to get to that point because I've fallen a little bit behind. So I'm a little bit out of sync with publication order. So I'm working my way back towards that now, and I will get on with that maybe a bit later in the month. But like I say, it was a nice, quick, easy read for me. They're quite formulaic, as I said, and they don't take a lot of effort to read. And I'm really enjoying Jessie's world, and I don't drop in and out. But yes, it's probably going to be another month or 2 before I read any more from Jessie's worlds. The penultimate finish of the month was another series starter and was another new release that came out in January that I read pretty much as soon as it hit my Kindle. And that book is The Sins We Hide by S. Cole. S. Cole is another name for Scarlet Cole. You can just see the books behind me here, the first 3 books from her Sad Friday series. I gushed about those all of last year, absolutely loved them. So when Scarlett said that she was going to be writing under a pseudonym, stories that were a little bit darker, set in a slightly darker world, I was like, yes, I'm in, I've got to try it. So I immediately had it on pre-order. This is a motorcycle club based romance, so it's a little bit darker. It has all the usual angst. So we have Clutch, who is the vice president of the motorcycle club that he belongs to, and Gwen, who is the sister of the president. Gwen has been absent from the club for a long time because she and her mum went on the run following something that happened in the club's history, and she has come back to the club looking for protection because she is in danger. And protection she finds, and this was a very hot book. This was very definitely a not safe for work book, and I absolutely adored the ride. As always, she has the next book in the series is already on the go. It is due out in March, I think it's due out. It's on pre-order. I will be continuing the series. I'm really intrigued by quite a few of the club members. There's a couple of club members that I would really like to punch in the throat. I wouldn't, the way motorcycle clubs are written as treating women, I wouldn't make a very good member. I wouldn't make a very good old lady, and I definitely wouldn't be one of the club girls. But there are a few of these guys that have serious potential, and I'm looking forward to reading about each and every one. So yep, just keep them coming, Scarlett, because I'm going to read everything you write. The final finish of the year was the January pick for Cozy Book Club, and that is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex. This is a book that left me not really knowing how to rate it. It felt like it should be a 4-star, but 3 stars felt too low. So I've gone in the middle. I've given it 3.75. But I can't really put my finger on what it was about it. It's one of those books, and I say this a lot with our book club books. I enjoyed it, but it's not one that I say I enjoy because some of the subject matter. This is about 3 men who are manning a lighthouse off of the English coast, and it's set in 1972, and they go missing. We then jump forward to 1992, and the wives and girlfriend of the 3 men from that time are being interviewed for a book that a writer wants to release, because he thinks he might be able to get to the bottom of what happened, because it's still a mystery. It's a locked door mystery. When they arrived at the lighthouse, the front door was locked from the inside. All 3 men were missing. This story takes you through both timelines, being told from the 6 points of view, so the 3 men and also the 3 women. There were only 2 voices that really stood out to me, and that was Bill and Helen's. Bill is married to Jenny. He's not happy with his life. Helen is married to Arthur, who is the primary keeper, and she is happy in her marriage. She's unhappy with elements of it because of some tragedies that have happened. But we're talking through the run-up to the men going missing and how they go missing. So you do find out at the end of the book how. And then the timeline. We're meant to be working up to, I think, towards a reconciliation of the women, because there is a rift between the women. And we are kind of working towards a reconciliation, but I don't think it quite pulled that off. The ending for the women's side of the story was very unsatisfactory. It was a little implausible, little unbelievable, and we all agreed on that in the book club. But again, it was one of those books that I could see the flaws in it, but it didn't stop me enjoying it at the same time. I believe this is a debut book by Emma Stonex. I would be interested to read more from her, so I will look out for more from her in the beginning. And this was the audiobook, and I do think listening to the audiobook helped me immensely. Listening to the other ladies talk on our meeting, I do believe that listening to the audiobook, because I had dual narrators who were giving different voices to the characters, I do believe that actually helped, because I had distinct voices to listen to. There were moments when I was listening to this as I was driving to work and driving home, because as I've said before, I listen to audiobooks when I'm commuting. This book had me completely drawn in. There were a couple of occasions I got to work, I got home from work, and kind of pulled up and sat in the car and thought, how did I get here? Because I had no memory of the journey, because I was so engrossed in listening to the story. Which is another reason why I'm really unsure about the rating to give it, because it had that complete hold on me for the time that I was in it. So yeah, so I think I would definitely recommend the audio version for this book. So that was January. How was your January? Please let me know in the comments down below. I love chatting to you all there. Have you read any of the books that I've talked about? What did you think about them? If you have enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video, which is going to be my series update. So I will see you all then. Bye.